Discover a realm of adventure reborn. The Final Fantasy XIV tabletop role-playing game, or FFXIV TTRPG for short, is a gateway into the magical world of Final Fantasy XIV through which you and your friends can embark on exciting and memorable adventures. In this game, one player will act as your game master, the arbiter, and lead storyteller, while the rest of your group will play as adventurers. Together you will confront powerful foes, interact with a diverse cast of characters, and roll dice to create a story all your own. As you explore the realm of Eorzea and beyond, remember that above all else, the point of the game is to have fun. This is a review of Final Fantasy XIV, the tabletop role-playing game starter set. Let's dive in. So here we have the Final Fantasy XIV Online TTRPG starter set. This is copyright 2024 by Square Enix, obviously. So what do we actually get in this game box? We actually get some dice, which is pretty nice. We have 60 20s and about 10 d6s, which is pretty much all that you're gonna need to play this game. We have a player book. This is what you're going to read first. This will have your rules in it. And then we have the Game Master book. This will have some additional rules, but most importantly, the adventures. If I can actually get this out, there we go. This will actually have the 3 adventures that you're going to be running. We have some strategy guides for each of the classes. So this will be for the warrior. We have the white mage strategy guide, the Dragoon strategy guide, the Black Mage strategy guide, so very helpful. And then we'll actually have the character sheets. Now, each character has 3 different levels. So we have the level 30 tank / warrior, level 40, and level 50. So each of the strategy guides will have 3 characters associated with it. So as you go through the beginning adventures, your character will level up and you'll just pull that character sheet out. We have the battle maps that we're going to use, and this is kind of a little bit weird. I'm not really a big fan of these maps, or at least the way they look. They're very basic. There's really nothing outstanding in them, and you do use them over, or at least you use, I think, this grassy one over and over again, but oh well, it is what it is. And then we have the markers and character token punch outs, and there's about 4 of these with the boards. And so everything that you're going to need in terms of monsters for the adventures and how they attack and all of that, they're going to be in punch outs here, which is actually nice. I'm really glad that they provided that. So if you plan on using the physical stuff, that is definitely an added bonus. This is the book you're going to hand to your players. Within are the rules for playing the game, which is quite easy in of itself, especially if you're used to running or playing D20 games. The different aspects of gameplay are broken down into 3 separate sections. First, you have a dialogue between the GM and their players during an encounter. You'll see dice results, and it's a very good first impression or introduction to the various aspects of gameplay before you get to the full rules. The second is a little comic that briefly recaps the dialogue up above. The last, and probably the most useful for those who have actually played a tabletop role-playing game, is the summary. We have brief bullet points on the rules presented here. After you get through the tutorial, dialogue, comic thing, you get the actual rules as you'd expect from a core rule book. First is the getting started section. All the verbiage you're expected to know is here. Next, we have the mechanics for rolling dice. This is a D20 game, meaning when your character wants to do something, the GM will present a challenge rating from easy to nearly impossible. The player will roll a D20 and add their attribute. If the total is equal or greater than the challenge rating, they succeed at the thing they were trying to do. You do have things like advantage, but not disadvantage. But surprisingly enough, these actually stack. So you can have 2 advantages, which allow you to roll a total of 3 dice, and then you'll choose the highest one among your rolls and use that. Instead of disadvantage, we just have penalties that are subtracted from your D20 roll. So this is definitely a game that's in favor of the players being able to do what they want. We do have opposition rolls, and these are simply D20 rolls with attributes added. Whoever gets the highest result wins. Plain and simple. Speaking of which, what are the different attributes that we have? Well, we have strength, which represents your adventurous athleticism, physical fitness, and the raw power they can bring to bear. We have dexterity, which represents your adventurous coordination, agility, reflexes, and balance. We have vitality, which represents your adventurous hardiness, physical health, and endurance. We have intelligence, which represents your adventurous sharpness of mind, ability to recall information, and reasoning skills. And then we have mind, which represents your adventurer's perceptiveness, instincts, and intuition. We also have some secondary attributes as well, and that'll be things like defense, magic defense, speed, vigilance, max HP, and your max MP. Combat is going to happen. The first thing you're going to do is determine if surprise is a factor. Characters who are surprised do not act in the first round. Next, the players and GM will determine the position of all of the characters. Finally, we begin with turn order. The adventurers and their allies take their turns first, followed by enemies, rinse and repeat. So remember, this game is definitely in favor of the players. A character can perform a few different actions on their turn: a primary action, a secondary action, movement, or focus. For primary actions, these will be things like using a primary ability, using a primary item, sprinting, so you can double the character's speed for that turn. You can perform any other action specified by the scenario or the GM to be a primary action, or you could perform a secondary action in lieu of it. For secondary actions, those will be things like secondary abilities, secondary items, perform any other action specified by the scenario or the GM to be a secondary action. And then for movement, it's just simply you can move. A character can forego all standard movement during their turn to focus. This allows them to perform an additional secondary action for a total of 2 secondary actions in a single turn. The character stands still to focus on their actions and can't spare a thought for mobility. Some abilities have effects that generate markers. Markers serve as visual cues that provide advanced notice of what is about to occur on the encounter map. When a marker is generated, an object or token should be placed on the encounter map to represent that marker. This is basically a way for the game to warn players that, hey, this enemy is about to do something bad in that specific spot, so you might want to move before you take a bunch of damage. Something that I really like is that boss monsters may have different phases. You down the big bad boss to 0 HP, but it's not quite over just yet. There's another phase. They may have new abilities or more HP, or the terrain is different and the PCs will have to contend with the environment. I really like this concept. You should definitely add it to your game just to see what happens. It makes some encounters more memorable. If a PC's HP falls to 0, they are knocked out. Death of PCs isn't really described in the intro rules. MP can go to 0 without any penalties. PCs naturally regain 2 MP at the end of a round's adventure step. That's after all the adventurers have taken their turn. Some abilities and traits have effects that alter the amount of MP a character recovers, and some will even negate the recovery altogether. PCs do have access to limit breaks. Limit breaks are special abilities that can be used in encounters of great importance or when fighting powerful enemies. Whether or not limit breaks are available for use depends on the scenario and the GM's discretion. The GM will inform players at the start of the turn, round, or phase in which they become available. A party of adventurers can use up to 3 limit breaks per encounter. However, an adventurer who has used a limit break once in an encounter cannot do so again during that same encounter. We do have enfeeblements or detrimental conditions, such as damage over time, being prone, slowed, blinded, stunned, knocked out, weakness, brink of death, comatose, and then death, which really only happens if the players and the GMs agree to it. On the very back of this book, we do have a rule summary, which is very handy. You could definitely print this out easily and hand it to your players, and you've pretty much got everything that they're going to need right there. The rules are very simple, so even new players to role-playing games can pick it up quite easily and go with it. The Game Master book serves as an advice companion for new GMs, but it also has 3 scenarios that are connected. The advice you get from the Running the Game chapter is about what you'd expect: gathering people to play with, where to play, the first game session, etc., etc. What is of use is that your PCs can have Chocobo companions. They come in Defender, Healer, and Attacker, and there are 3 for each, level differences, same as the PCs, so we have level 30, 40, and 50. You do get a little bit of information about the world of Final Fantasy XIV, mainly how time works and its verbiage, but also how travel works, or lack thereof, in this game. This RPG took things a little too literal with the inclusion of aetheryte crystals, which does eliminate most of the travel as a gameplay mechanic, which is rather unfortunate. Alright, here comes your obligatory spoiler warning. If you plan on playing through any of the scenarios in this book as a player, you might want to turn back now or risk your chocobo getting eaten. Yeah, that's right. You have been warned. The Crystal Caper is the first scenario in the book. I find it kind of funny that in each of these scenarios, there's a short blurb about what to do if the party refuses the quest. Like, why are they even playing this game in the first place if there's an option to actually refuse the quest? So, as expected, the party will need to do a little bit of investigation about the wagon. When they get to the site of the attack, they are ambushed by antlings, and these combat sections list the enemy's tactics on a given round, which is very nice for new GMs. I really do appreciate that. Once the antlings have been dispatched, the party can investigate further. They'll discover wagon tracks leading away from the scene, and they'll come across a cave protected by some Eorzea. As they head in, assuming the party managed to clear the Eorzea, they'll see effed corpses all around, which actually can hint as to what lies further within, if they investigate the bodies. At the end, the party will fight against the Eorzea and a drake. This one is pretty straightforward, which is what you'd expect for the first scenario for new players and GMs. You basically just move from point to point and deal with the combat in that section. Imperial Machinations is the second scenario in the book. The PCs talk to Ruban and get their quest, who then sends them to Camp Blue Fog. Once they arrive, they discover that the soldiers are preparing for battle, and soon enough, a few basilisks appear. Once the basilisks have been disposed of, Cracked Fist, that's the name of the NPC by the way, tells them that something is riling the beasts in the area and he needs their help to determine what is doing so. The party can gather information at Camp Blue Fog and then at the Carlium processing plant, which allows one or more of the adventurers to join in a drinking game to gather information. This is like the only social encounter in each of these three adventures, by the way, so really make use of it. After the PCs have gathered the information, they hear a strange noise. When they investigate it, they discover Imperials and their Magitech armor. Another battle commences. Soon enough, the adventurers arrive at the testing grounds for the newly developed Mark II Hellclaw, which is undergoing a live fire exercise against a Gorgamera. Another fight ensues. Only this time the PCs will have to contend with the Magitech bits firing across the battlefield as described in the formations table. The Mark II Hellclaw also has a Berserk mode, which can make things very interesting. Once they dispatch of the Hellclaw, they realize that Galba Luxpulcher has been observing the fight, but flies away to return another day. Heroes of Operation Archon is the last scenario of this book. The adventurers join in on a battle to oust the Imperial forces, and when they get there, they receive an urgent message. A pack of Okus is attacking the Order of Twin Adders and needs their help. When they arrive on the scene, they find some monsters and Lazy Lawrence, which has two phases, which makes for an interesting battle. After the monsters have been defeated, the adventurers will need to rescue some sylphs and little Solace. The first encounter here is a standard fight, easy enough. The second has the adventurers rescuing a captive elder, but to do this, the PCs take an invisibility potion, and using any actions other than the move or helping the elder will result in the effect disappearing, leading to the discovery of the PCs. It's actually game over if this happens. This encounter is supposed to be a minigame and it feels really out of place, because once the players rescue the elder, the Imperials spot them and a battle begins anyways. Oh well. The Magitech Scorpion is a formidable foe, but will self-destruct after the second round's adventure step. Depending on how much damage the adventurers have dealt to it will determine how much damage they take when it does explode. There really isn't a consequence to taking damage or even being knocked out, so I wonder what the point of this even is, especially since this is the last encounter of the entire scenario. I have to applaud the layout and presentation for this set, especially in the player's book. Starting with the script and comic was a great idea. This really gets the point across for new players. For more experienced players who have played other D20 games such as Dungeons & Dragons, then skipping to the actual rules may be more of your thing. All of the important texts are bolded or in a different color, which draws your attention to that bit. Enemy stat blocks are very easy to read, and I am glad they've included markers when applicable. The text can be a little wordy, honestly. It makes me feel like I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes, but I didn't have any problems actually understanding the effects. The artwork is where I take some issue with. I would venture to say most, if not all, is recycled from the Final Fantasy XIV game. I like the illustrations well enough, even though they are reused quite a bit, but I do not like the in-game screenshots. These are mostly used for NPCs and monsters. Even the monster cutouts are from the game. I can see why they've done this. If you have the assets ready, you might as well use them. But it makes the book look tacky and makes me think that it's just another product to make Square Enix some money. Square Enix took a very literal approach into converting Final Fantasy XIV into a TTRPG. For new players who want to try role-playing with their friends in the world of their favorite MMO, this would be a pretty good fit. The rules are easy, and the assets and the effects, they should all feel very familiar. For those who are a little bit more of an experienced player when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, or for people who just aren't a fan of Final Fantasy XIV, then this might be a hard pass for you. For me, the rules are a little bit too light for what I want in a tabletop role-playing game. Traveling and the mechanics that follow traveling rules, usually in tabletop role-playing games, are probably going to be absent in this game because of aetheryte crystals. But then again, this is just a starter set. You're not going to get the full rules here, and I wouldn't really expect you to get the full rules. Even then, there just really isn't a whole lot to offer here. There are no skills, which isn't really a big deal. There are a lot of games that don't use skills. But it also just doesn't seem like there's a lot going for this game outside of combat. Honestly, I can get down with some of the gameplay choices, but the game could be better, and I think what it is that it's just tied down too much to Final Fantasy XIV. I really wish they had done a little bit more to separate this game from Final Fantasy XIV, because this, at the end of the day, is a tabletop role-playing game, and it should be treated as such, not a paper form of a video game. I wish this wasn't Final Fantasy XIV the TTRPG. I wish it was a Final Fantasy tabletop role-playing game. Something unique and different than any of Square Enix's properties that took a little bit more risks with its offerings. I fear they've taken the easy route to try and grab some of that TTRPG cash cow that we seem to be flowing through these days. And it just doesn't work. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series, and I will see you guys in the next video.